Bonjour, welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. My name is Abinaya, and I am so excited that you have decided to use my course to learn French. As a junior in high school, I've been learning French for almost 5 years, and have been a member of my school's French Honor Society for 1 year. Without the help of my teachers, it would have been extremely difficult to learn a subject that was completely foreign to me, so I aim to do the same for all of you. I gained the inspiration to start this course from my sister, who had just started learning French. I realized that I could use my passion for the subject to help other middle schoolers like her. So in this video, I'm going to cover what exactly we will go over in the course and how to reap the maximum benefits. French for Middle Schooler consists of 3 sections: alphabet/numbers, vocabulary, and grammar. The majority of my videos are 3 to 5 minutes long, so you can learn everything you need to but won't get bored in the middle. The way my videos are formatted are concept and then examples. I first go over the general concept and rules and supplement that with examples. As someone who's been learning French for a long time, I know that the only way to truly understand a concept is to really understand the examples. So I encourage you to pause the video, take screenshots of the examples, or watch a video a few times to ensure that you really understand the concept. Also, keep in mind that these videos are made as a review for someone who is already learning French in school. However, if you are a beginner looking to get a head start, these videos can definitely help you. In the first section, alphabets and numbers, I have a few short videos going over the French alphabet and numbers. These videos are mainly for you to understand the pronunciations and remember them. The second section of this course is a little different from the others. Unlike the other sections, there's only one video for you to watch, because teaching vocabulary through videos is not as effective as practice and repetition. The first video is about greetings, so you should definitely watch it to get an idea about French and the different pronunciations. After the video, there is a PDF with links to all the other vocabulary sets. I've put the other vocabulary sets into a website that allows you to learn the vocab through flashcards, quizzes, and different games. I highly suggest trying out all the different features and figuring out which one works the best for you. And finally, the third section, grammar. In this section, I cover multiple beginner-level grammar topics such as verb conjugations, articles, and adjectives. These topics are generally catered towards students in their first year of French, so they will provide the foundation for later topics. I hope you find this course helpful. Feel free to leave any questions below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Au revoir! Bonjour! Welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover the French alphabet, which is very similar to the English alphabet but has different pronunciations. Make sure you watch this video a few times to master all the pronunciations because it is the foundation to learning French. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, G, H, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. An easy way to familiarize yourself with the alphabet is to learn a song. If you sing the regular English alphabet song with the French letters, it works perfectly and is a great way to memorize the alphabet. I hope this video helped. Au revoir! Bonjour! Welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover the numbers from 1 through 69. Pay attention to the pronunciation and make sure to watch this video a few times so you really remember all of them. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Make sure you definitely remember these numbers because you will see them show up a lot in larger numbers. Now, try to find a pattern in the upcoming numbers as I read the numbers from 20 to 29. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. If you noticed, 20 is 20, but following 20, all you have to do is add 1, 2, trois, quatre, cinq, six, sept, huit, or neuf, depending on the number. So you could consider 20 as the root of the word and the additional number as the stem. The French numbers follow this pattern until 69, so make sure you remember this tip to help you memorize the numbers. Now, listen as I read the numbers from 30 to 69 and look for the pattern in all the numbers. 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. I hope this video helped you memorize the numbers and learn the different pronunciations. I know that unfamiliar sounds can be difficult to learn at first, but with practice, you can definitely do it. Au revoir. Bonjour. Welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In today's video, we're going to cover the numbers from 70 to 100. Unlike the last video, the numbers from 0 to 69, there is no specific pattern that the numbers follow, so this will require a little more practice. Now listen closely as I read the numbers from 70 to 79. 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. If you remember from the last video, the root for 60 is 60, so the numbers from 60 to 69 are 60, 61, 62, and so on. However, 70 does not have a specific root. Instead, it is 70, which when translated literally means 60, 10. So you can remember that 70 being 60 plus 10 is 70. Now listen as I say the numbers from 80 to 100. 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. As you heard, 80 is 80, which when translated literally means 4 20s. Since 80 is 4 times 20, or 4 20s, this is an easy way to remember the French word for 80. After this, you just add the additional stems from en to 19. I hope this video gave you easy tips to remember the different French numbers. I know learning this can be difficult at first, but by using the numbers more often, you will definitely be able to remember them. Au revoir! Bonjour! Welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we will cover basic greetings and phrases used in conversations. To learn all the vocabulary, we're going to read the French phrase and then read the English phrase. First, let's learn how to start and end a conversation. To begin, you would say bonjour for good morning, bonsoir for good evening, and salut for hi. To end, you could say à tout à l'heure or à plus tard for see you later, à bientôt for see you soon, and au revoir for goodbye. Next, let's move on to how to ask someone their name and how to tell them yours. To say, what's your name, you would ask, comment tu t'appelles? To reply, you would say, je m'appelle. Now, let's cover how to ask someone how they are. To ask someone how they are doing, you could ask ça va for are you doing okay? Or comment vas-tu for how are you doing? To reply, you would say très bien for very fine, or pas très bien for not too well. Finally, to ask someone how old are you, you would say tu as quel âge? And as an answer, you would say j'ai 10 ans if you were 10 years old. So those are all the basic conversation starters that you should know before you start learning French. I hope you were able to keep track of all the new vocabulary you learned today. I know there are a lot of words to remember, so watch this video a few times to make sure you really understand all of them. Au revoir! Bonjour! Welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we will cover the basics of grammar that will serve as the foundation for everything else we will learn later. We will go over what the subject pronouns are in French, the conjugation for the verb avoir, and the conjugation for the verb être. As you know, the subject pronouns in English are I, you, he, she, one, we, you, and they. These are generally the words you start a sentence with. For example, I love pancakes. Similarly, in French, the subject pronouns are je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, et elle. Keep in mind that he is il, she is elle, and one is on. When you are saying they, you need to check if the group you are talking about is all female, all male, or a combination. If the group is all male, you would use il. If the they you are referring to consists of all girls, you would use elle. And if the group is a mixture of males and females, you would use il. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to point out that in French, when there's a T or S at the end of a word, you do not pronounce it. You'll get used to all the pronunciations as you keep hearing more French, so don't worry if your accent isn't perfect yet. Next, we're going to conjugate our first verb, avoir, which means to have. In English, we would conjugate this as follows. I have, you have, she, he, one has, we have, you have, and they have. In French, the conjugation would be j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont, and elles ont. And finally, we're going to learn the conjugation of the verb être, which means to be. In English, the conjugation would be I am, you are, he, she, one is, we are, you are, and they are. In French, the conjugation is je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils ont, and elles ont. Avoir and être are the most basic verbs because you use them all the time in everyday conversations. So make sure you memorize their conjugations. I know it can be difficult to memorize unusual conjugations that aren't similar to English at all, but with practice, you'll definitely be able to remember them and use them frequently. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In today's video, we're going to learn about the different types of articles in French, which includes indefinite articles, definite articles, and partitive articles. First, let's start with indefinite articles. In French, the three indefinite articles are en, which means a or an for a masculine noun, un, which means a or an for a feminine noun, and de, which means some for plural nouns. You use these articles when you are referring to a random noun instead of something particular, the same way you do in English. Let's go over a few example sentences using indefinite articles. Je suis une fille, tu as un livre, j'ai des bonbons, which means I am a girl, you have a book, and I have some candy. Notice how for every sentence, the indefinite articles agree in number and gender with the noun. Now let's move on to definite articles. In French, the four definite articles are le, which is used for masculine singular, la for feminine singular, les for plural, and l apostrophe when the noun starts with a vowel or h. All four of these forms mean the, so it is used to refer to a specific object. For example, if you say I want the book, it means that you want a particular book. But if you say I want a book, you are saying that you are fine with any random book. Keep this difference in mind when you have to choose between an indefinite and definite article. Again, let's go over some phrases so you get the idea of how to use definite articles. Tu as le vélo, j'ai le stylo, tu es l'homme, elle a la chaise, which means you have the bike, I have the pens, you are the man, and she has the chair. Notice how all the articles agree with the noun, but make sure you remember that you have to use L apostrophe when the noun starts with an H or with a vowel. Next, let's cover partitive articles. In French, the four partitive articles are du for masculine singular, de la for feminine singular, de for plural, and de L apostrophe when the noun starts with a vowel or H. All four of these forms mean some, and you use partitive articles when you want a portion of something. Make sure you don't confuse this with indefinite articles. You only use indefinite articles when you want a whole item or several whole items. Here are some example sentences with partitive articles. J'ai du gâteau. Elle a de la confiture. Vous avez des œufs. Elles ont de l'eau. Which means, I have some cake. She has some jam. You have some eggs, and they have some water. Pay attention to how the partitive articles are used, and don't forget that the L apostrophe is used when the noun starts with a vowel or with the letter H. That's it for this video. Make sure you watch this video a few times to ensure that you really understand these concepts, because they are extremely important. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover how to conjugate the three groups of verbs in French: ER verbs, IR verbs, and RE verbs. First, let's go over the general rule for all verb conjugations. First, remove the last two letters of the infinitive form of the verb to obtain the root. And second, add the specific endings for each type of verb. Let's start with ER verbs by using the verb aimer as an example. Aimer means to love, and as you can see, it ends with the letters ER. Most French verbs that end with the letters ER are conjugated this way, but there are a few exceptions, which we will cover in a later video. So to conjugate a regular ER verb, you must follow these steps. Remove the ER so you're left with the stem. In the case of aimer, you would be left with aim. Add the appropriate ending that goes with each subject. For each subject pronoun, there's a different ending you must add onto the stem of the verb. The endings for ER verbs are E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, and ENT. So the complete conjugation for aimer would be j'aime, tu aimes, il, elle, on aime, nous aimons, vous aimez, il, elle aime. Now let's cover IR verbs, taking the verb finir as an example. Finir means to finish, and like all regular IR verbs, it ends with the letters IR. There are some verbs that end with IR but are not conjugated regularly, but we will cover those in a later video. So to conjugate an IR verb, you have to follow the same steps as an ER verb, but there are different stems. Using finir, the stem is FIN after you remove the IR. The endings are IS, IS, IT, ISSONS, ISSEZ, and ISSENT. So the complete conjugation for finir would be je finis, tu finis, il, elle, on finit, nous finissons, vous finissez, il, elle finit. Finally, we're going to learn how to conjugate RE verbs, taking the French verb attendre as an example. Attendre means to wait for, and just like the other types of verbs, all RE verbs end with the letters RE. Similar to other types of verbs, you remove the RE and add the endings. The endings for RE verbs are S, no ending for the il, elle, on form, ONS, EZ, and ENT. Make sure you remember that for the il, elle, and on form of the verb, there is no additional ending. For attendre, the stem would be attendre, and the complete conjugation would be j'attends, tu attends, il, elle, on attend, nous attendons, vous attendez, ils, elles attendent. That's it for this video. Make sure you take the time to memorize the different endings because they are necessary for a lot of the French verbs. Also, keep in mind that these rules only apply to regular verbs. In later videos, we will go over some of the irregular verbs that don't follow these rules. I hope this video helped. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we will cover the different types of adjectives, including demonstrative adjectives, interrogative adjectives, and possessive adjectives. First, let's start with demonstrative adjectives. In French, there are four demonstrative adjectives. Se for masculine singular, set for masculine singular when the noun starts with a vowel or an H, set for feminine singular, and se for plural. The first three words, se, set, and set, mean this, and the last word se means these. Let's go over a few example phrases for these demonstrative adjectives. Ce chapeau is this hat, cet homme is this man, cette chaise is this chair, and ces chaussures is these shoes. Next, let's go over interrogative adjectives. In French, the four interrogative adjectives are quel for masculine singular, quel for masculine plural, quel for feminine singular, and quel for feminine plural. These four forms mean which or what, so they are used in sentences such as which shirt. Let's go over a few phrases so you understand how the interrogative adjectives are used. Quel fruit means which fruit. Quel pull means which sweaters. Quelle chemise means which shirt. And quelle pomme means which apples. And finally, we are going to learn about possessive adjectives. In French, possessive adjectives are used to show ownership for an object or objects. Listen as I read out the possessive adjectives. To say the word my, the masculine singular and feminine singular when the noun starts with a vowel is mon. The feminine singular is ma, and the plural form is me. For your is ton, ta, te. For his, her, and it's son, sa, se. For our, it's notre, no. For your, it's votre, vo. And for their, it's leur, leur. These adjectives are really simple to use because they are similar to English. However, you must remember that you have to agree the possessive adjective with the object after the adjective. For example, if you are saying my chair, you have to say ma chaise because chair is feminine. That's it for this video. Make sure you watch this video a few times and pay attention to the examples so you really understand how these adjectives work. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to talk about how to make a sentence negative and the different expressions used. First, let's start with the basic form of negation in French. Take the sentence Je regarde la télévision, which means I watch television. To make it negative, we would say I do not watch television. As you know, the keywords that make a sentence negative are do not. Similarly, in French, the keywords that make a sentence negative are ne pas. You put these two words around the verb to make it negative, with the ne going before the verb and the pas going after the verb. In our example sentence, Je regarde la télévision, you can make it negative by saying Je ne regarde pas la télévision. Next, let's move on to more complex expressions. Ne jamais means never. Ne pas encore means not yet. Ne plus means no longer. Ne personne means no one. Ne rien means nothing. Ne que means only. And ne ni means neither nor. For each of these except ne ni, you have to put the ne before the verb and the actual expression after the verb. Also, keep in mind that ne que is not actually a negative expression since it means only, but it is included here because it follows the same pattern as the negative expressions. So now let's go over example sentences for the first 6 expressions. Elle ne finit jamais ses devoirs. She never finishes her homework. Vous ne travaillez pas encore. You do not work yet. Nous ne promenons plus avec nos amis. We no longer walk with our friends. Je n'entends personne. I hear no one. Tu ne regardes rien sur la télévision. You watch nothing on television. Ils n'aiment que les fraises. They only love strawberries. Finally, let's learn how to use the phrase ne ni. You use this phrase when you have multiple objects in the sentence. You put ne before the verb, and you put each ni before the object. Let's look at a few example sentences to get an idea for how this expression is used. Je n'ai ni les ballons ni les jeux, which means I have neither balls nor games. Je n'ai ni ballons ni jeux, which also means I have neither balls nor games. So what's the difference between the two? You use a definite article like les when you're talking about the object in general. So in the first sentence, you're saying you do not have any balls nor any games. However, in the second sentence, you are saying that you do not have the balls or the games, which refers to specific balls or games. I know these topics are a little difficult to understand at first, and that the negative expressions are not so easy to memorize. But with practice, you will definitely be able to get it. I hope this video helped you understand the various types of negative expressions. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover the French prepositions, the rules when talking about a country, and conjunctions. First, let's start with the two important prepositions, a and de. The preposition a generally means to or at. When you use a before the definite articles, it forms different contractions. A plus l is o, a plus la is ala, a plus le is o, and a plus l apostrophe is a l apostrophe. Let's go over a few example sentences so you understand how to use these rules when talking in French. Je donne la lettre à Sarah. I give the letter to Sarah. Elle est à l'hôpital. She is at the hospital. Nous promenons au parc. We walk at the park. Tu es à la table. You are at the table. Vous parlez aux filles. You speak to the girls. Notice how for the first sentence, there is no definite article in the sentence, so you can use the regular form of a. Next, the preposition de generally means from or of, and like the preposition a, it also forms contractions with definite articles. De plus le is du, de plus la is de la, de plus le is de, and de plus l apostrophe is de l apostrophe. As you can see, the contractions are similar to those formed by a. Now pay attention to the various contractions as we go over a few sentences. Il est le frère de Nicolas. He is the brother of Nicholas. J'arrive de l'aéroport. I arrive from the airport. Nous promenons du parc. We walk from the park. Le train arrive de la gare. The train arrives from the station. Tu regardes des fenêtres. You watch from the windows. Again, notice how in the first sentence there is no definite article, so you must use the regular form of the preposition. Next, we will cover how to use the prepositions with countries and cities. For cities, to say that you are in or going to a city, you would use the preposition à, for example, à Paris. And to say that you are from or coming from a city, you would use the preposition de, for example, de Paris. For countries, there are different rules for masculine and feminine countries. For masculine countries, to say to, you would say au, for example, au Japon. And from is du, for example, du Japon. For feminine countries and masculine countries starting with vowels, to is en, for example, en France, and from is de, for example, de France. And for plural countries, to is au, for example, aux États-Unis, and from is de, for example, des États-Unis. Finally, we are going to go over the three main conjunctions that you should know. Et, which means and, mais, which means but, and ou, which means or. These words are used to link sentences together and are basically used the same way they are in English. Well, that's it for this video. I know learning all the prepositions and conjunctions can be difficult at first, but you'll definitely get it with the practice. Au revoir. Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover all forms of adjective agreement, including number and gender, and the placement of adjectives in a sentence. First, let's start with regular adjectives. Let's take intelligent as an example, which means smart. The masculine singular form is the regular form, which is intelligent. For the masculine plural form, you have to add an s, making the adjective intelligent. For the feminine singular form, you add an e, making the adjective intelligente, and for the feminine plural form, you add an es, making the adjective intelligente. Those are the rules for most regular adjectives, but there are different rules for adjectives that end with an e, such as jeune, which means young. In this case, the masculine form is the regular adjective jeune, which means young. The masculine plural is the adjective with an extra s, jaune. The feminine singular is also the regular form of the adjective because it already ends with an e, so it would be jaune, and the feminine plural form is jaune with an extra s. Thus, for adjectives that already end with an e, the masculine and feminine forms are the same. Next, let's cover the rules for adjectives that end with an s, like gris, which means gray. The masculine singular form is the regular form of the adjective, or gris. The masculine plural form is also the regular form of the adjective because there is already an s at the end, so in this case it would be gris. The feminine singular form would have an extra e at the end, making the adjective grise, and the feminine plural form would have an extra es at the end, making the adjective grise. Now let's move on to more complex adjectives, such as those that end with the letters eux. An example of such an adjective is heureux, which means happy. When you have these adjectives, change the x in eux to an se. for the feminine form. Thus, the feminine form of uru would be heureuse. The masculine plural form would be the regular adjective, heureux, and the feminine plural form would be the feminine form with an S, or heureuse. Next, let's go over adjectives that end with the letters if, such as sportif, which means athletic. When you have these adjectives, you have to change the F in if to ve for the feminine form. This would make the feminine form of sportif, sportive. As usual, the masculine plural form is the regular form with an extra S, sportive, and the feminine plural form is the feminine form with an extra S, sportive. Now we're going to cover adjectives that have irregular feminine forms and don't follow any pattern. The feminine form of blanc is blanche. The feminine form of bonne is bonne. The feminine form of gentille is gentille. The feminine form of gros is grosse. The feminine form of mignon is mignonne. And the feminine form of long is longue. To find the plural forms, you have to follow the other rules you learned before. For example, for gros, the masculine plural form is the regular form of the adjective because it ends with an S. But the feminine plural form is grosses with an extra es, because you add an S to the feminine form. Now, we are going to go over the different forms of the adjective beau, which means handsome or beautiful, nouveau, which means new, and vieux, which means old. These three adjectives have irregular forms, so they need to be memorized separately. The masculine singular form of beau is beau. But when you want to use the masculine singular form and the noun starts with a vowel or an H, you need to use belle. For example, to say handsome man, you would say bel homme, where belle is spelled B-E-L. Now pay attention to the pronunciations and spellings of the other irregular forms as I read them out loud. Masculine plural for beau is beau. Feminine singular for beau is belle. Feminine plural for beau is belle. Masculine singular for nouveau is nouveau or nouvelle. Masculine plural for nouveau is nouveau. Feminine singular for nouveau is nouvelle. Feminine plural for nouveau is nouvelle. Masculine singular for vieux is vieux or viel. Masculine plural for vieux is vieux. Feminine singular for vieux is viel. And feminine plural for vieux is viel. And finally, we're going to talk about the position of adjectives in a sentence. In French, only certain adjectives are before the noun, while the rest are after that noun. The types of adjectives that come before the noun can be remembered by this acronym: BAGS, for beauty, age, goodness, and size. All adjectives pertaining to beauty, age, goodness, and size go before the noun. Examples of these kind of adjectives are joli, beau, jeune, vieux, bonne, grande, and petit. Pay attention to the adjectives in the following example sentences. Elle est une fille intelligente. She is a smart girl. Il est un grand garçon. He is a big boy. Notice how the first sentence does not have a bags adjective, so intelligent goes after the noun. That's all there is for this video. I know there was a lot of information about adjectives and it can be overwhelming at first, but I suggest you watch this video a few times to really grasp the various rules I talked about. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to cover how to ask a question using est que and inversion, and the different question words in French. First, let's start with the most basic way to ask a yes or no question. Take, for example, the sentence, tu as une pizza, which means you have a pizza. Let's say you wanted to ask someone, do you have a pizza? This is an example of a simple yes or no question because the only possible answers to the question are yes and no. In French, to turn your statement into a question, you would say, est-ce que tu as une pizza? Thus, in French, the key phrase est-ce que needs to be added to the front of a sentence to turn it into a question. Here are a few other examples so you understand how to use est-ce que. Est-ce qu'ils aiment du fromage? Did they love cheese? Est-ce que vous êtes à Paris? Are you in Paris? There's another method of asking questions if you don't want to use est-ce que in your sentence, and it's called inversion. For this method, all you have to do is reverse the order of the subject pronoun and the verb and put a dash in between them. For example, tu aimes des framboises would become aimes-tu des framboises. If the subject pronoun is il, elle, or on, and the last letter of the verb is a vowel, you have to put the letter T between the subject and the verb. For example, il a des frambois would become a-t-il des frambois. This just makes the sentence easier to pronounce when you're speaking in French. Also, keep in mind that it does not matter whether you use est que or inversion because they both lead to the same meaning. And finally, let's go over the French question words which will help you ask questions other than just yes or no questions. Quand means when, pourquoi means why, que means what, où means where, comment means how, qui means who, and avec qui means with who. All the question words can be used with either est que or inversion. For example, quand est-ce que nous promenons? When do we walk? Pourquoi regardes-tu la télévision? Why do you watch TV? Qu'est-ce que tu aimes? What do you like? Où habites-tu? Where do you live? Comment est-ce que tu finis tes devoirs? How do you finish your homework? Qui aimes-tu? Who do you love? Avec qui est-ce que vous habitez? With whom do you live? That's all I have for this video. Make sure you review these concepts and try to familiarize yourself with both forms of asking questions. I hope this video helped. Au revoir. Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to be covering irregular ER verbs. If you watched the verb conjugation video, I mentioned that there were some ER verbs that were not conjugated regularly. So in this video, we'll learn about those verbs. So watch closely as I conjugate the verb manger, which means to eat. Je mange, tu manges, elle mange, nous mangeons, vous mangez, elle mange. For the je, tu, elle, vous, ils, and elles form, the verb manger is conjugated like a regular ER verb, but for the new form, the ending is EONS. These kind of verbs are called GER verbs because they end with those letters. The only rule you have to remember is that the ending for the new form is EONS rather than ONS. Now pay attention as I conjugate the verb commencer, which means to start. Je commence, tu commences, elle commence, nous commençons, vous commencez, elle commence. Similar to the conjugation for manger, all the subjects have normal ER conjugations except for the new form. For the new form, there is an accent called a cd on the C. These kind of verbs are called CER verbs, and their only rule is that the new form has a cd on the last letter C. Next, watch as I conjugate préférer, which means to prefer. Je préfère, tu préfères, elle préfère, nous préférons, vous préférez, elle préfère. This verb has a normal ER conjugation for the nu and vous form, but it has the opposite accent on the second E for the je, tu, elle, ils, and elles form. These verbs do not have a specific name, but are irregular because of the different accent. Other verbs that have a different accent on the second E of the je, tu, elle, and ils, and elles form are espérer, which means to hope, and répéter, which means to repeat. Now pay attention as I conjugate the verb acheter, which means to buy. J'achète, tu achètes, elle achète, nous achetons, vous achetez, elles achètent. This verb is similar to préférer because the nu and vous forms are regular. However, for the je, tu, elle, ils, and elles forms, there is an accent on the first E. Again, these verbs do not have a particular name, but other similar verbs are amener, which means to lead, emmener, which means to bring, lever, which means to lift, and promener, which means to walk. Next, watch as I conjugate the verb appeler, which means to call. J'appelle, tu appelles, elle appelle, nous appelons, vous appelez, elles appellent. Like the last two verbs, the nu and vous form of appeler are regular. The je, tu, elle, and ils, and elles form have two L's, so for these subjects the consonant was doubled. Other such verbs are appeler, which means to spell, jeter, which means to throw, and rappeler, which means to call back. And finally, pay attention as I conjugate the verb nettoyer, which means to clean. Je nettoie, tu nettoies, elle nettoie, nous nettoyons, vous nettoyez, elle nettoie. Again, the conjugation for this verb is regular only for the nous and vous form. For the other forms, you have to change the y to an I. These verbs are called YER verbs, and they all follow this rule. So that's it for this video. There are definitely a lot of rules to learn, but if you take your time to get familiar with all the different conjugations, you will be able to remember them much better. Au revoir! Bonjour, welcome back to French for Middle Schoolers. In this video, we're going to go over the conjugations for all the irregular verbs that we have not learned yet. Make sure you pay attention to the different spellings and pronunciations as I read them out loud. Faire means to do. Je fais, tu fais, il, elle, on fait, nous faisons, vous faites, ils, elles font. Vouloir means to want. Je veux, tu veux, il, elle, on veut, nous voulons, vous voulez, il, elle veut. Prendre means to take. Je prends, tu prends, il, elle, on prend, nous prenons, vous prenez, ils, elles prennent. Boire means to drink. Je bois, tu bois, il, elle, on boit, nous buvons, vous buvez, ils, elles boivent. Aller means to go. Je vais, tu vas, il, elle, on va, nous allons, vous allez, ils, elles vont. Venir means to come. Je viens, tu viens, il, elle, on vient, nous venons, vous venez, ils, elles viennent. Pouvoir means to be able to, but when you conjugate it, it serves as the word can. For example, je peux means I can. Je peux, tu peux, il, elle, on peut, nous pouvons, vous pouvez, ils, elles peuvent. Devoir means to owe, but when you conjugate it, it can also mean should. For example, tu dois can mean you owe, or you should, or you must. Je dois, tu dois, il, elle, on doit, nous devons, vous devez, ils, elles doivent. Dormir means to sleep. Je dors, tu dors, il, elle, on dort, nous dormons, vous dormez, ils, elles dorment. Sortir means to go out. Je sors, tu sors, il, elle, on sort, nous sortons, vous sortez, ils, elles sortent. Partir means to leave. Je pars, tu pars, il, elle, on part, nous partons, vous partez, ils, elles partent. Voir means to see. Je vois, tu vois, il, elle, on voit, nous voyons, vous voyez, il, elle voit. And mettre means to put. Je mets, tu mets, il, elle, on met, nous mettons, vous mettez, il, elle met. I know memorizing all these verb conjugations can be difficult, but make sure you take slow steps and practice gradually. I hope this video helped you. Au revoir!
Bonjour, I hope you enjoyed this course and really learned a lot about French. So what are the next steps? This is my first French course for middle schoolers in their first year of French. However, I'm currently in the process of putting out a second course called French for Middle Schoolers Part 2, where I will cover more complex topics such as past tense, future, and imperative. That course will be out in the near future, and I will post the link in this course as soon as it is out. Also, keep a lookout for my math and science courses for middle schoolers, whose links I will also post in this course once they're out. I hope this course inspired you to continue learning French. Au revoir!